Hello and welcome to the Center of Love. In person, virtually online, I think we have Lori and Barbara. Good of you to join us from the comfort of your home. Always a pleasure to see you. And of course, the people here in physical presence, welcome. Good to see you all. Thought we would start with a prayer. Now, I know that for some people, the word prayer, it might be a little icky. So I encourage you to disconnect your previous notions of what prayer might be and perhaps entertain the notion that prayer is dialogue between lowercase y, you, and uppercase y, you with a capital Y. And so I encourage you to close your eyes if you're willing as we beseech the universal spirit which resides within and connects all things. We honor and embrace the sacredness of your divine presence. May your boundless love and wisdom guide our every step as we acknowledge the inherent unity and interconnectedness of all. Grant us the awareness to recognize the beauty and divinity in every being and the compassion to treat all life with respect and kindness. May we learn from the harmony and balance found in nature and strive to be caretakers of this wondrous earth. Nurture our souls with the sustenance of understanding and growth, and help us forgive as we recognize the imperfections within ourselves and others. Lead us away from ignorance and suffering towards a path of enlightenment and fulfillment. For all the beauty and abundance that surrounds us, we express our gratitude and vow to protect and cherish it. In awe of the ever-changing cycles of life, we trust in the eternal flow of existence. May we embrace the divine power within us as we manifest love, peace, and joy in the world. For this is our connection to the sacred whole, forever and ever, in perfect harmony. Amen. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Welcome to the Center of Love, where the many come together to honor and celebrate the one, where we endeavor to recognize ourselves as integral parts of the whole, individual fibers woven through the cosmic tapestry of creation, individual and integrated, unique and universal, where we recognize ourselves not as static objects, but as processes unfolding. Indeed, you yourself are a process. And our goal here is to direct this unfolding process in the direction of love, unity, and understanding. You, my friends, are at the very center of your own unfolding life. You, my friends, are the center of love, and together we combine our gifts, insights, wisdom, and experience, using vulnerability and openness as a form of adhesive. We come together as one. Leading with love, unifying and serving, we are the center of love. The Canadian playwright Lindsay Kite says, when you're from a community, you can fall and fall hard, but you'll never hit the ground. There are too many hands to catch you. If this is true of a community in general, my friends, it is especially true of this community. We take turns. Some weeks, we are the ones falling and getting caught. Other weeks, we are the hands that do the catching. Some weeks we teach, other weeks we learn. It's a pleasure and a privilege to see your beautiful faces this fine morning, and it's also a privilege to welcome our speaker today, James Redfern. whose talks are always informative and thought-provoking. Today, James will be sharing his insights and experiences on the topic of labels. Labels. What are they good for? That's the question we're going to be exploring with James today. Was Kierkegaard right when he said, "Once you label me, you negate me"? Do labels serve a purpose in our attempts to get to know ourselves and others, or do they simply constrain and fix in permanence the flowing process, which is our very self? I have no idea what James will say to these questions. I don't even know if he's going to answer these questions. All I know is, like you, I'm hanging in suspense, because whatever direction James takes in this talk, I'm sure it will spark meaningful and productive dialogue during our open discussion. And so, brief word of introductions. Born in the Philippines, James considers himself a BC boy, having been raised since the age of 6 in Vancouver. In searching for a path, James has studied with a variety of faiths, from the Baptists to the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Baha'i. At last, he has settled on a softly chewed blend of humanism, Buddhism, scientific rationalism, and universal woo-woo, in recognition of the mystery and magic that always seems to stay one step ahead of scientific discovery. I had the pleasure of meeting James through our dear friend Cressa, and the first time we hung out, we were moving furniture into his trailer, and the entire time we were together for like 3 hours, we did not stop talking. The conversation flowed naturally, it was engaging, it was deep, it was multifaceted, and I knew right away that this is one of my guys. So I'm very, very grateful that he is a part of this community, and I welcome you to the pulpit to share your truth with us.
Thanks very much, Oliver. Wonderful introduction. Checks in the mail. Okay, good morning, everyone. And yeah, we're going to, today I'm going to discuss with you labels and labeling. And what we're going to look at specifically today is the 10 labels that the mental health industry offers us in the DSM-5, the 10 personality traits, 10 personality disorders that they like to call the personality types that we possess. So labeling, the word labeling and labels has some stigma to it, in that, well, we need labels, don't we? Every one of us has a label so we can identify ourselves. We go into the grocery store. Anything that's packaged has a label on it by law, whether it's in a box, a can, or a jar. The label says what's in it, how much is in it, and if you flip it around, the ingredients as to what specifically is in that product. So when we look at people, we can use that analogy by when we understand a label that that person potentially has, we can see what's in them, how much is in them, and particularly the ingredients that is forming their personality. Labels, every noun out there is a label. If I was to say, I am going to climb the, you want me to finish the sentence. What am I going to do? Am I going to climb the tree, the mountain, or the ladder? So there's nothing wrong with labels, but there's a problem with labeling, particularly labeling people, and particularly labeling people in a derogatory fashion. So what this talk is going to attempt to encourage you to do is to just drop the labeling of people, particularly in a derogatory fashion. You know, there are derogatory labels like, oh, he's an a-hole, or she's a B, or she's a Karen, but there are also general labels that aren't particularly supportive either, such as, oh, the Americans, they're such rude people, or the Canadians, wow, what polite people. Really? Or the French. Yeah, just go drive in Vancouver and you'll find out. Yeah, that oxymoron. Or the French, they're such arrogant people. So those are general labels that aren't particularly derogatory, but they don't serve any accurate purpose. So there is some accuracy to Soren Kierkegaard's comment. He was a 19th century philosopher / psychologist, that when you label me, you disregard or negate me. And there is truth to that, because when we label somebody, particularly with a negative label, we are disregarding the universal aspects of their personality. So let's take a shallow dive into 10 personality disorders. The mental health industry, psychological and the psychiatric industry, uses the term disorder in the 10 personality disorders in the DSM-5. Anybody heard of the DSM-5? Okay. So the DSM-5 is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the 5th version that the psychological and psychiatric industry uses to basically define all mental disturbances and illnesses. We have been studying psychology for tens of thousands of years. Even the spiritual disciplines have been studying the soul and ultimately the personality. But the very first categorization of personality traits was in the 4th century BC by a Greek philosopher named Tyrtamus. And he categorized our personalities into 30 different traits. Now, the DSM-5 has narrowed that down to 10. I want to talk about the word disorder first, because I'm uncomfortable with that word because it has stigma to it. And people don't want to be classified with a disorder. And when they do that, they're in denial. So we can also call them personality traits or personality types. The reason that the mental health industry uses the term disorder is because when it disorders your life, when you have personality traits that disorder your life in some way, finances, relationships, career, or your personal health, then it becomes a disorder. But that does not necessarily mean that we possess a disorder. As I go through the 10 personality traits here, you are going to recognize some of the traits within yourself. Please do not self-diagnose off the tiny bit of information that I give you today. I would encourage you to go onto Google or YouTube or whatnot and do some research into the 10 personality types. So I prefer to call them types or traits. So here we go. The 10 personality types that we all possess are categorized into cluster A, B, and C. Cluster A is the odd, bizarre group of people. Cluster B are the dramatic and the erratic. And cluster C are the anxious and the fearful. One of the reasons why I have delved into the study of psychology is because I loathe paying an individual $150 an hour to listen to me. And the first one that I went to looked really bored. So I guess I wasn't weird enough for him. Now let's quickly differentiate between a personality disorder and a mental illness, okay? Apparently it gets quite soft and mushy in the definitions between a personality disorder, personality trait, and mental illness. Personality disorders, if they are serious enough, can be classified as mental illnesses. but mental illnesses are not classified as personality disorders. So certain mental illnesses like mania and depression, or if you combine those two, bipolarity, which is manic depressiveness, anxiety, PTSD, and psychosis are mental illnesses. They don't belong in the group of personality disorders. So let's look at cluster A. We have paranoid, schizoid, and schizotypal. This is not schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a mental illness. So the paranoid personality disorder, I'm going to read off my iPad if you don't mind. Paranoid personality disorder is characterized by a pervasive distrust of others, including friends, family, and partners. As a result, this person is guarded, suspicious, and constantly on the lookout for clues or suggestions to validate his fears. He also has a strong sense of personal rights, and he is overly sensitive to setbacks and rebuffs, easily feels shame and humiliation, and persistently bears grudges. Paranoid personality. The schizoid personality. The term schizoid designates a natural tendency to direct attention inwards into their own life and away from the external world. A person with schizoid PD is detached and aloof and prone to introspection and fantasy. There's a young man in Sydney that I've come across over the years. I haven't seen him this year. And I finally figured out what he was about. I thought he might be schizophrenic, but I don't know much about schizophrenia. However, this categorization defines him perfectly. And now I can understand why he behaves the way he does. He will not interact with people at all. So let's look at personality trait, PT, not BD, schizotypal disorder. Schizotypal personality trait is characterized by oddities of appearance, behavior, and speech, unusual perceptual experiences, and anomalies of thinking similar to those in schizophrenia. These latter can include odd beliefs, magical thinking, for instance, and thinking or speaking that the devil might make him appear, suspicious, obsessive ruminations. There's another young man in Sydney this year, I've seen numerous times at the library, and dresses extremely oddly. And regardless of the temperature, raining or not, he's in black shorts, black singlet, tattoos all over his body. His hair is in a bun and dreadlocks. And I would suggest that there's a possibility here that he might be experiencing schizotypal disorder. Doesn't want to speak to me. Okay, so let's move into the cluster B, something that now we're going to move into cluster B and C, which we probably would see more often or recognize more often. And cluster B consists of antisocial personality, borderline, histrionic, and narcissistic. Now there, we've already touched on points that you've already heard on. So antisocial personality disorder or traits is significant because it's quite common, and it's far more common in men than it is in women. The antisocial personality trait is much more common in women than in men and is characterized by a callous or unconscious or conscious lack of feeling for others. The person disregards social rules and obligations, is irritable, aggressive, acts impulsively, lacks guilt, and fails to learn from experience. A good friend of mine, who's a doctor of psychology, I've known him since grade 2, one of my best friends. He was a psychologist at Matsqui Prison. And he said most of the prisoners in prison have got antisocial personality disorder, the callous disregard for others, doesn't learn by their mistakes. And a very serious degree of antisocial PD is psychopathy, where they'll actually become serial killers and whatnot. Borderline personality disorder. This one's interesting. Wonder if I should share with you why it's interesting, and maybe I will. In borderline personality traits, emotional instability is definitely the dominant trait here. The person essentially lacks a sense of self, and as a result experiences feelings of emptiness and fears of abandonment. There's a pattern of intense but unstable relationships, emotional instability, outbursts of anger and possibly violence, particularly in response to criticism, and impulsive behavior. Sometimes suicidal threats and acts of self-harm are common with people with a high degree of borderline personality traits. So I'll share with you. So the last relationship I was in, it took about 1.5 years to discover, with the help of my doctor of psychology friend, that the lady I was dating probably had borderline personality disorder. And it got to the point where I actually became physically sick. And my stress was so bad, I developed a heart murmur and a terrible rash on my hands and arms. And the first thing the doctor said when he looked at my hands, he said, "Are you under stress?" And I said, "Yep, I am," but I didn't explain why. So, as part of the whole process of boundary protection, that relationship had to end. But I found that very interesting because, again, in identifying personality traits, I was able to see what's in the person, the ingredients, and how much of those ingredients were in that person. Okay, histrionic personality disorder. People with histrionic personality disorder lack a sense of self-worth and depend on attracting attention and approval of others for their well-being. They often seem to be dramatizing or playing a part in a bid to be heard and seen. Indeed, histrionic derives from the Latin word histrionicus, pertaining to the actor. Many years ago, up in Fort McMurray, there was a young man in the gym, and I've been going to the gym for many years, and he was behaving so oddly, demanding attention, that when he was pushing weights that weren't that great, he would almost be shouting, as in, "Oh!" And he was constantly doing this to the point of irritating everyone in the gym. And I finally had the courage to go up to him and say, "Hey, buddy," I didn't ask him to stop. That might have been too much. I said, "Hey, buddy, could you keep it down a bit?" And that actually shut him down. And I would suspect that's all he was doing. He was looking for attention. So an understanding that someone might have a little bit of histrionic personality disorder helps you to understand what's going on. You might run into a drama dad or a drama mama. That could be going on. Someone in histrionics, overplaying. Have you heard the term Karen? Some very interesting YouTube videos on Karens, which are the technical term, but it's really broadened, but it originated with middle-aged white women that feel entitled and having a meltdown. Okay? I didn't know it was middle-aged white women, but apparently it's broadened now that the Karen videos include every race. And obviously these women are going through some sort of histrionic reaction for whatever reason the situation is calling for. Could be, a traffic event or something in a store. And some of it is really quite shocking, where Someone going through histrionics is complaining at a sales counter and then throws a cup of coffee in the salesperson's face. Here's an interesting one, narcissistic personality disorder. In narcissistic PD or PT, the person has an extreme feeling of self-importance, a sense of entitlement, a need to be admired. He or she is envious of others and expects them to be the same of him or her. He lacks empathy and readily lies and exploits others to achieve his aims. To others, he or she seems self-absorbed, controlling, intolerant, selfish, or insensitive. Do we know anybody south of the border that might fit that?
You don't even have to go south of the border, I think.
Fair enough. Yeah, I find that one quite interesting because I've often questioned myself. Have I got some narcissistic traits within myself? Do I have a disorder? I hope not. But have definitely found shades and shadows of many of these traits within myself. The avoidant personality disorder, number 8, just about at the end here, cluster C is avoidant, dependent, obsessive disorders. The cluster C, avoidant personality disorder, believes that they are socially inept, unappealing, or inferior, and constantly fear being embarrassed, criticized, or rejected. They avoid meeting others unless they are certain of being liked and restrained, even in their intimate relationships. The avoidant personality disorder is strongly associated with anxiety disorders and may also be associated with actual or felt rejection by parents or peers in childhood. The avoidant personality disorder, I believe, doesn't just extend to the social realm. I believe it can extend to life experiences in general. And I feel that I have definitely got some aspects of my personality in the avoidant personality disorder in many of the things in my life that I've avoided simply because of anxiety reasons. The dependent personality disorder is almost self-evident. The dependent personality trait or type or disorder is characterized by a lack of self-confidence and excessive need to be looked after. This person needs a lot of help in making everyday decisions and surrenders important life decisions to the care of others. He greatly fears abandonment and may go through considerable lengths to secure and maintain relationships. I sometimes wonder if women, and it's usually women that are abused in relationships, particularly physically, have a difficulty in leaving that relationship, not just out of fear, but also because of a dependent personality that they require to be looked after in some way, despite the negative aspects of the relationship. And finally, let's move on to the anancastic personality disorder, known as the obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, this one's interesting. I've done a fair bit of research on this because I definitely belong in this category. I have strong shades of this in my personality, as do my 2 sisters. So many of the traits in these personality disorders are inheritable. So the obsessive compulsive personality, which incidentally is not the same as obsessive compulsive personality disorder. Obsessive compulsive is different than the obsessive compulsive personality. Perhaps I'll get into that. It really deserves 10 or 15 minutes on its own. So the obsessive compulsive personality is preoccupied with details, rules, lists, order, organization, or schedules. Perfectionism is part of this personality disorder. Perfectionism is so extreme that it prevents a task from being completed. And a deviation and a devotion to work and productivity at the expense of leisure and relationships. So there you have the 10 personality traits. 10 personality types, 10 personality disorders. In summary, we've taken a very light look at the traits and disorders that the mental health industry has offered us. And we've differentiated them a little bit from mental illnesses and personality disorders, not the same thing. And why have I done this today, tying it with labels and labeling? It's because understanding leads to change. Understanding what's in ourselves can help us make changes that we want in ourselves, and it certainly can help us to change our understanding of other people. And consequently, hopefully, we can just rid the negative labels that we put on other people. It can also encourage us to label their behavior, not the person, and also label the situation or the event that's going on.